Welcome to the Optimized Equine Podcast. I'm your host, Tamara Lee Barrett. Today I'm joined by Ivy Starnes of Ivy's Gait. Ivy is a gaited horse trainer based in Fort Worth, Texas, who travels the country to help riders achieve that coveted smooth gait. She believes the secret to a perfect gait isn't about dominating your horse, a special bit, or any other gadgets at the tack store. Instead, it's about building relaxation and genuine connection first. Through her training, clinics, and her extensive collection of online training videos, Ivy teaches riders that gaited horses can naturally gait on a loose rein and a relaxed frame. Her method focuses on training horses to soften and relax as the foundation, followed by specific exercises that allow the horse to naturally move into gait. Ivy also teaches riders how to understand their horse's body language and de-escalation techniques that can literally save lives on the trail or anywhere else that you may need them. Today we'll dive into Ivy's training philosophy and explore why it really is worth the time and effort to get your horse to gait calmly and correctly. We also discuss the common gaited horse myths that Ivy wants the world to stop falling for. Please take a moment to support our guests and the show by sharing, following, subscribing, rating, or interacting on social media. It truly makes a huge difference. Without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast, Ivy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
To start, can you tell us about your background and how you began specializing in gaited horses, as well as what your business looks like today?
Yeah. When I was growing up, I wasn't involved with horses at all. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, no riding experience whatsoever. When I was 13, my family bought property in Northwest Illinois and about 13 acres. And we moved out there and I was like, hey, we could have a horse. Well, when I was 15, my parents bought a horse for me to use. And I found that I thought riding was boring. It was just not that much fun. And a year later, my parents were like, well, if you're not going to ride this horse, we're going to sell her because nobody else is using her. And I was like, well, no, wait, don't sell her yet. And I was like, let me see if I can get a job working with horses. I don't know why I even thought this. I literally have no idea where this came from. And I mean, I love animals. I've always loved animals. We had friends that had horses, and I went to them. That summer, I turned 16. I got my driver's license, and I said, hey, do you need anyone to help with horse stuff? And they're like, sure. We just lost the person who used to work for us. They said, here are 3 yearlings. You need to do the yearling training. So I need to catch them in a big, giant pasture with a bunch of mares. I needed to teach them how to lead, pick up their feet, get used to tarps, fly spray, put a saddle on them, ground drive or long line. And they were like, here you go. Here's the horses. If you have any questions, come get us.
And so you had no formal training at this point,
I
it sounds
had, I
like.
think, 7 lessons to learn how to put tack on, how do you mount safely, how to halter a horse, brush them, lunge them. So I knew that much. I'd read books. That's it.
Yeah, diving right in.
Yep. But to their credit, they do have nice horses. I was not in danger, and I am very much don't micromanage me. So they didn't. They were like, here you go, come get us if you have questions. And so I did. I worked with those horses. And I found I loved training. I loved the problem solving of getting these 3 yearlings to do what I wanted, even though I had no idea what I was doing. What I didn't know didn't realize when I first started working for my friends was that they raised and bred and trained Rocky Mountain and Kentucky Mountain gaited horses. So without on purpose, because the horse that my parents got was a quarter horse mix. So not gaited. My parents have no background in horses. Nobody in my family had a background in horses. So when I started to realize that they had these different gaited horses, I was like, well, okay, that's cool. And that first summer, at the end of the summer, they started putting me on some of the better trained horses and started showing me like, this is a smooth gait, this is a pace, this is a trot, this is what you listen for, this is what you look for. And that was very, very helpful to me. And then I worked for them for 3 more summers. So the next year, the yearlings were 2-year-olds, and I did ride them lightly. The good news is I didn't weigh very much, and we weren't doing a lot of riding on these 2-year-olds. I wouldn't probably do that now. But at the time, I started riding them. They had me riding more horses than just the 2-year-olds. And the same thing the next year. But what I didn't like were some of the training methods, where when I started the 2-year-olds under saddle, I used a simple snaffle. But then as soon as they started working on the gait or trail riding them, they immediately put them in a shanked bit and said, if you want to get gait, you have to ride with a shank. And then if they would get a pacey horse, they would say, oh, you need to give them a longer toe in front. Or if they're trotty, put a longer toe in back, or put a little bit more weight on the front if they're pacey. And I was like, I can't, you shouldn't have to use those things. That's not how I started them under, again, I'm like 17 and 18. Like, I don't know a lot. But I was like, but they're gaiting in the snaffle, in the round pen. So why do I need something different? And, if someone tells me you can't do this, that's me saying, well, I guess I'll just prove you wrong. So by them telling me that you can't get gaited horses to gait on a loose rein, you can't do it in a snaffle, you can't do it, with all these, things, I was like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. So I ended up buying one of their horses when I was, I think, 18 and then turning 19, and trained that horse to gait in a snaffle, in a halter, on a loose rein, and then ended up I kept him for a year, and I sold him for quite a bit of money. And that was the very beginning. I was like, oh, there's money here. Well, that was the most money I probably made on a gaited horse. But I learned so much, and I didn't know a lot, but that's kind of how I got started. And then I realized there were a lot of people who struggled to get their horses to gait. And there were a lot of people that were teaching using like really technical terms or making the process very complicated, or more prevalent was very inhumane ways of getting gait. And so I started to put out content and teach people what I knew in a more gentle, kind way. And then it was from when I was like 19 until I was about 26, I was in a learning phase where I lived at home with my parents, but I took horses in for training. I did very cheap lessons anywhere in the area and was learning how to get all these different horses to be smooth, but relaxed and on a loose rein.
Before I forget, did you ever get an answer why you couldn't do it in a snaffle or a loose rein when you would have those kind of questions? Did you get an answer to that?
There was never an official answer other than this is how we've always done it. Kind of a
Okay.
mentality.
I get that. I get that.
So that was the beginning of my training with the different gaited horses. And it has changed to where I now travel around the country and give 3-day gaited clinics with the goal of getting riders to be able to feel that smooth, relaxed gait and be home and continue to do the work. I don't have any quick fixes. What I'm going to do are give riders exercises they can take home. I also take horses in for training and do a lot of social media content. I only recently got on TikTok, but previously I've been very active on Facebook and YouTube. That has been my biggest sort of platform to share this information. And so my training looks like going to the barn, training whatever horses I have, filming all of that, coming home, putting it on my computer, chopping it all up so I can put it on social media, and then planning out posts and content, and then replying to emails and scheduling clinics and things of that nature. Also, people do sometimes come for lessons where I'm at in Fort Worth, Texas. I do a lot more traveling than people coming to me.
So when you're traveling to clinics, what kind of prerequisites would you say are there? I mean, I get the impression you get all kinds of different levels and people and horses showing up, which I think is awesome because at the end of the day, we all know those principles, like
Yes.
it works wherever we need it to work. And I think that's great, but that also presents challenges as well. So tell us a little bit about that. Yeah.
When people sign up for my clinics, there's not really a lot of prerequisites that I require for you to sign up. You have to be riding your horse. Some horses come with only a few rides on them, and that usually works pretty well if the horses are pretty calm, which a lot of the gaited horses I'm working with are pretty chill. But I do get a
Mhm.
very wide spectrum of riders and horse abilities. Generally, I would say most of the riders tend to be more beginner level, not in that they haven't ridden, but that they don't have a lot of advanced schooling. So, like to know
Mhm.
what a leg yield is, or to know how to get your horse to soften and move forward off of leg. So that's probably the
Mhm.
biggest trouble that I run into is most of the riders I get are there for the right reasons. They are there to train, they want to learn, they want to go home and work on it, which is really good. But a lot of them don't have any formal training. Very, very good riders, but not a lot of formal training.
And I very often hear, my horse hates the arena. How do you hear that a
Yes, I
lot?
do.
Okay. My horse doesn't like arena work. Um, and I understand. And if your horse is having a bad time, I don't think you should keep on drilling it. However, there is so much important value, to arena work, whether it's truly in an arena or not, but it can't all happen on the trail. Would you
Amen.
agree?
Amen.
Yeah. Okay.
100%.
Okay.
One of the things I tell people is you have to ride circles to be able to go in a straight line. But the reason I tell people you have to ride in a circle is because a lot of the horses I get tend to be a bit rushy. And so by going on a circle, we can control the speed a little bit more. But I have some riders complain. They're like, but I don't feel comfortable riding in the circle. And I'm like, well, that's why you have to practice it. But my goal is to get them out on the trail. But yes, they have to do work I like how you clarified, in an arena, or it doesn't have to be an arena, just the type of mindset of doing the
Mhm.
training in a flat area. And one of the
Yeah.
things I encourage people to do, because I know a lot of people don't like arena work, is I encourage them to ride, say, 15 or 20 minutes rather than thinking they have to plan to be there for an hour.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think some people do make a bigger thing out of it than it needs to or should be for them and their horse, especially if they already have some kind of negative
Yes.
association with it in their minds. Short and sweet, fantastic.
Yes.
That's great. Okay, we may have already covered some of it, but what is some gated horse propaganda that you want the world to stop falling for?
That's such a great question. One of the biggest things that I see that the outside world looks at gated horses with a really big negative, like why they would never want a gated horse, is because they're so used to seeing horses that are having their heads pulled up and big shanked bits. And they see that and they're like, oh, that's so yucky. And I agree. But
Mhm.
gated horses are more than just having this high headset and a long bit and riders pulling back. Gated horses can and should be ridden with their heads lower and a relaxed rein. So that's one of the biggest things is I would want people to understand is gated horses are not just what you see in the show ring. There are they are so versatile. There are some horses that are working cows and they're doing obstacles, and gated horses are getting into working equitation. And like you said, they do endurance and they do competitive trail rides and liberty work and trick training. And there's gated dressage as well. So there
Mhm.
almost anything you can do with a non-gated, you should be encouraged to be willing to try with a gated. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to excel at it like other breeds, but they are so much more than what you see in the show ring.
Would you say it's so much more than just a gate? Are there other things
Yeah.
about them? I'm
So
assuming.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
gated horses tend to be on the whole very calm, very friendly, very personable. Like they're not usually these stoic horses that don't want attention. They are the in your pocket type of horse, generally speaking. And many of them, especially if they don't come from specific show bloodlines, are very relaxed. They're often very sure footed. And of course, the smooth gait makes them very comfortable for people to ride over long distances. If they've struggled with their knees or their ankles or their back or their neck, they become something that allows people that thought they were done riding to keep riding. And it is very fun. Now, and also, if you like a challenge, gated horses are for you. Because gated horses, because you add that element of the additional gaits, make it so much more tricky than a walk, trot, canter horse. So if you like problem solving and you like a challenge, try gaited horses.
I'd be willing to bet you might be the only person saying that last part.
Okay, well, but anyway, if there's anybody out there with that mentality, maybe they'll give it a shot.
Yes. Yes. Um, Not saying I disagree. I just think in some ways people probably often hear, "Oh, this is like I want a smooth, easy trail horse." Like they're not looking for the challenge, so they get the horse. So can you explain a little more what the challenge is that you're talking about?
Yeah, and that would probably be like propaganda number 2, would be
Okay.
you're really good at this. You're just leading the questions right where they need to go. So many people have seen videos, read articles, seen Facebook posts, have been told that gaited horses just gait naturally. Well, of course, there's an element of truth to that, where gaited horses, that natural gaited gene is in there. So they have the natural ability. We don't need to use any sort of mechanical devices to get them to change. But because they have this natural ability to gait, it allows them to do at minimum 5 different things. So most walk, trot, canter horses walk, trot, canter. Well, your gaited horse, instead of only trotting, they can do a trot, a broken trot, a smooth gait, a stepping pace, or a pace. For sure. So every single gaited horse out there can do those 5 things at minimum, potentially more than those 5. And so when you have a rider and they buy this gaited horse and they're told this is just going to be smooth and it's going to gait, and they may do any 1 or 3 or all 5 of these different movements that range from smooth to not smooth, it becomes very difficult and frustrating. So that's one of the things I want to change, is people to understand that gaited horses are actually really tricky. You actually have to be a better rider and better educated about the gaits than if you're going to ride a walk, trot, canter horse.
For someone who isn't familiar with the specifics of their gaits, can you tell us a little bit about that? And of course, they can see videos on these things on your pages, but give us a little bit to listen to about the different gaits.
Gaited horses are, generally speaking, about 10 to 12 different breeds of horse that have what we call the gaited gene. There's not a lot of research done on that yet, but they have the ability to not only walk, trot, canter, but instead of just the trot, they have the ability to do these different movements. This is where the difficulty comes in, because not only are there at least 5 different movements the horse can do, and I'll tell you what they are in a minute, but there's also a huge overlap of what the gaits are called, and there's no consensus. This
Mm.
literally drove me crazy when I first got into gaited horses. I was so frustrated that I would be like, I think it's this, and everybody would be over here telling me, no, it's this, it's this, it's this. You can read the books, there's no consensus. You can watch online YouTube videos, there's no consensus. And there's not a lot of very good specifics. So, with that caveat, gaited horses can pace, which is where 2 legs on one side move together. They can do a stepping pace, which is similar to the pace, but it becomes a 4-beat movement. Now, the 4-beat will, for a stepping pace, will sound like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it can sometimes be considered smooth, but sometimes not so smooth when it speeds up. The other end of the spectrum, you have the trot, which we're familiar with because it's a trot. It's a 2-beat gait with the diagonals moving together. And you have the broken trot, where of the diagonals, the front foot lands before the back, making it a 4-beat gait. But again, it sounds like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, where there's a pause between the 1, 2, and the 3, 4 landing. And then in the middle, you have what we call an evenly timed gait. Generically, I call it a saddle rack. You'll also hear all kinds of different names for it. We'll get into that in a minute. But the saddle rack is evenly timed. And that's the important thing. That's what makes it smooth. So if a horse can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's the same footfall pattern as a walk, but it's sped up. And it sounds like pucka, 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 pucka. And when you hear that, that is when your horse is so smooth and the rider is just gliding along. And that is, generally speaking, the goal. Now, most of my clients trail ride. We're not in the show ring. So when I'm training, I'm not trying to train for breed-specific show ring requirements. So, for example, if you have a foxtrotter and you were going to show, you would have to teach the foxtrot. There's nothing wrong with the foxtrot, but it's not very smooth. And it's also not very fast and smooth, where the saddle rack can be anywhere from 5 miles an hour and it can go on up 13, 14, 15 miles an hour. And it's very comfortable to ride. Also, in the walking horse world, if you were going to be showing, they would have you do a running walk. Well, running walk is not the same thing as a saddle rack. It is evenly timed, but it has a big head nod. It has an overstride. And the biggest thing I found when I work with all these different gaited horses is that the running walk, while it is a walking horse movement, not all walking horses do it naturally anymore because they've been bred pacier. And so for some of these breeds, we're moving away from the actual natural movement that's smooth and easy for the horse, and we've made them more pacey or trotty, which then makes it harder for the rider to get that smooth gait. So whether you have a pacey horse that where the legs move together or the trotty horse, your goal is always to get to that middle movement where it's an evenly timed, smooth gait.
Got to know where those gears are.
Yes.
That's a lot more gears to operate
Yes.
than the other one for sure. Yeah.
And I would say the it ties in a little bit to the first propaganda thing, but the second one is that you don't need a big shanked bit or heavy shoes on your gaited horse to get them to gait. That is something. So when I started posting on Facebook about 12, 13 years ago, there were groups where people would ask for help with their gaited horse. And the 90% of the suggestions in the comments were put a certain big shanked bit on the horse and put heavy shoes on the front. That was the majority of the advice they got. And then I would go on there and type in, oh, I think you need to get your horse to relax and put their head down. And now when you go on gaited groups, most of them, if you share a video of your horse that's high-headed and pacing, you're going to get so much more good advice, like your horse needs to relax, they're hollowing their back. Maybe you could get a chiropractor out. Have you had a farrier look at their feet? They look a little bit long. And what bit are you using? Let's try maybe a gentler bit. And so much has changed in the gaited sphere. There's plenty of people still advocating for the old ways. That's still there. But it has definitely changed. When I first started doing clinics, the majority had never heard of what I was going to teach them. They never heard about getting your horse to soften and relax and put the head down. Horses come to my clinics so much better trained now than 10 years ago.
I was going to ask, do you feel like the change is only on the internet or like when you travel around? But it sounds like you're feeling that change all over, yeah?
Yeah, there are certainly areas of the country where they're more resistant to change, where it's been more ingrained in their traditions. But whenever new people come in, they don't have that mentality. So as new people kind of come into the breed or the sport, they're bringing in, like if they did dressage, they're going to bring some of that in there and go, well, I don't want to ride with the head up. That's dumb advice. And then they go looking for help. And then they find help and they ride differently. And then they show other people that you can ride differently. So it is changing.
Yeah, I think some of the hardest situations are people that, like you said, they have a history to it. And it's not that they staunchly disagree, but they're not out looking for new solutions because they're not having a problem.
Yeah.
Like, why go put in all this study and effort and all this stuff? They're like, things are fine. But that's sometimes a more challenging person to talk to or get through to on some of these things,
Yeah.
someone who's not looking, whereas sometimes there's people like desperate, please,
Yes.
like help me. They are just like a sponge. They can take it all in so easily. But it takes all kinds.
Yes.
So let's say we have a rider who they bought the gaited horse. They want to go for their smooth trail ride. They bought it off a video. They know it gaits correctly. They saw it. But now they have it and they can't get it to gait correctly. But otherwise, it's a good horse, well behaved, friendly. Does it really matter if that horse gaits correctly? And from your perspective, why should a rider invest the time and effort to learn about getting the gaits correct?
There's an aspect of riding gaited horses where I think we have to address if how the rider is riding is damaging the horse. And so if the rider has a gaited horse that's not gaiting, we want to look at why that might be. And if the horse is not gaiting because they have like their head up and their back is hollow and they're pacing, which is the most common, the way that a gaited horse will go if they're not going to gait, then I would
Mhm.
say it's very damaging to the horse's back and their joints long term. And so it is worth it for the horse's longevity, for the horse's health, to try to fix those things, to get the horse to relax, to put their head down, to lift their back, maybe get chiropractic work done, make sure there's no ulcers. All of that is for the horse's benefit, which I think is important to address. And then I think for me, it's really important to get the horse gaiting because that's so fun. Like I'll tell people, gaited horses are hard, but they are really fun. When you get your gaited horse gaiting, it is amazing. And it is worth the time and the effort. And I won't deny that there is time and effort that goes into getting that. Even me as a professional, people bring me horses and it takes weeks to get that beautiful gait to be perfect and for them to hold it. But then it is lovely and so fun. And then here's really why you should do it. Because you can go on a trail ride and ride for miles and not be sore when you come back because that gait is just so wonderful to ride.
Mhm. Good for the horse, good for the rider, and good for your investment too. So, yes, lots of reasons to put in that effort and get help. You know, I think for some trail riding types, it's a little foreign to like get help, you know. Um, but really, that's pretty fun once you get into
Yeah.
it.
And
It's kind of addicting, actually.
it is really fun. A lot of people, I don't say this, but a lot of riders will tell you if you ride a gaited horse, you'll never go back. I would say if you trail
Yeah,
ride, I would never go back to trail riding with walk, trot, canter horse. When I
yeah.
moved here to Texas, I trail rode with my quarter horse for like 7 miles, and I was like, this is the dumbest thing ever. I just don't want to ride the trot or canter, walk,
Uh-huh.
trot, canter for 7 miles. I would much rather have a
Hmm.
gaited horse, though I still love walk, trot, canter horses. But for trail riding, I don't, yeah, I wouldn't do anything other than a gaited horse.
Yeah, my mom has a Rocky Mountain horse actually, so she's gonna appreciate you said that. Because she's always trying to get me to trail ride more than I do, and I'm like,
Well, well, here's a little
yeah.
secret. I don't like
Hmm.
trail riding. Um, a lot of when I tell people that,
Hallelujah.
when I tell people that, they're like, "What?" And then inevitably, what they do is they are like, "Well, you haven't ridden with us," and they're like, "You haven't ridden in Colorado, or you haven't ridden in Arkansas, or you haven't ridden," and I'll tell people like, "Those are beautiful places. I would love to trail ride for an hour and then be done." I would much rather
Yes.
train a horse than to go spend time trail riding.
Yeah, and I think it is important to say, yes, of course it's beautiful to go on a trail ride every once
Yes,
in
it
a while.
is.
I cannot comprehend the lifestyle of the people that's all they do. I'm like, oh,
Well,
but they don't get what the heck I'm doing in the
well,
arena.
and
They don't get it. They don't get why that's fun for me, you know?
well, and
So,
definitely, I think for you and I, the fun is in the training, and then also if you and I, if this is what we do for work, then going for a ride on the weekends isn't a vacation necessarily because we've been riding all week.
yeah.
And so I've
Hmm.
done two competitive trail rides this year. And so we ride for about 5 hours and do obstacles and it's timed and,
Hmm.
and things like that. And the 5 hours goes by pretty quickly. I will admit when you're paying attention to your timing and making sure your horse is okay and things like this. But when I go and it's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday of 3 days of work, it's not a vacation. When I talk to a lot of these riders, they work other jobs during the week, and this is their time to go spend time with their horse, and they love it. Or when they go
Hmm.
on a trail ride in beautiful locations, but they're not riding their horses every day or other people's horses every day for work. So it is a different
Yeah.
mentality.
Definitely. And nothing wrong with any of the approaches.
Not at
That's
all.
the wonderful part, you know? You find a horse that's the right fit, you can make any of those your reality.
Yes.
So, So can you tell me how your training approach differs if you, let's say you're meeting a horse for the first time in a 3-day clinic versus if this horse is being dropped off for training for 3 months or something like that?
I don't think I've ever been asked this question, so it's great.
Hmm.
When I'm working with a horse at a 3-day clinic, so the way I do clinics are individual lessons to make sure everyone gets the same amount of time. And I only have basically 3 hours over the weekend to get the horse to change from, say, pacing to gaiting. And so there are things that I do quickly that I would not do at home. Well, first is I train for an hour at a clinic, but most of my training sessions when I'm at home working with a horse for a couple of months tend to be 20 to 40 minutes long. And they only get longer as the horse starts to get it and we add distance and time. At a clinic, I focus so much on getting the horse to tuck their nose. So to give, vertical flexion. Because
Mhm.
vertical flexion is something that is taught in dressage. It's taught in a lot of Western training of quarter horses. They teach them to tuck their nose. And it's something that is basically never taught to most gaited horses. And so that's one of the
Mm.
biggest deficits I see with the horses I work is they have no softness. Now, I've had people argue with me that tucking the nose is not softness. And what I tell is like, of course, it's not the complete training, it's not everything, but so many of these of gaited horses, especially, are bracy. They brace when you
Mhm.
put the littlest bit of contact, no matter what the bit is, whether they're bitless or have a snaffle or a shanked bit. Their instinct is just to go against it, and that braciness goes through their entire body. Okay, and often makes gaited horses very pacey. And if your listeners don't know, the pace is where the two legs on one side move forward and back together, like a camel. So they move forward and land together, and absolutely not desirable. But so many of
Yeah.
them will brace against that contact, and then they will pace. And so the beginning of getting the horse to relax through their body is to get vertical flexion with really light touch. So the goal
Mhm.
is softness to get them responding. Um, and that's just the beginning. And I found that I can make a big change in a horse in just a couple of hours by focusing on that. Where I'll take more like a week to try to get all of that done. If they're here for training at a clinic, I'm trying to get them to really soften and stay soft in about 2 hours.
No big deal.
Yep, it's super easy.
Yeah, no big deal at all. Now, let's break down the word brace because I think it's used a lot, but it can mean different things. A first step is if the horse is, we'll give my best horse impression, this
Yeah,
every time they A, feel the bit, or B, even anticipate feeling the bit in so many cases, because I think there's trail riders that say, I'm on a loose rein, but their horse is still going like this. And so they have braced,
mm-hmm,
and that's
yes,
what brace means to me. Now, brace means a lot of things to a lot of people. They feel it in different ways. But if your horse is doing that in anticipation or in response to the bit, everything behind it is kind of dysfunctional at this point.
100%, completely agree.
Or, not adjustable, dysfunctional, probably hurting the horse,
Yes,
probably uncomfortable. Anyway, also not safe.
yes,
I'll get off my
that's
soapbox now.
no, I'm going to join you on your soapbox.
Yes,
um
okay. Yes,
where
hop on up here.
where I tell people I don't want to ride your horse outside the arena, your seasoned trail horse that's really, really well behaved, really calm, if they're constantly bracing and doing that. Where what your demonstration for those that are listening, and not watching is, sticking your neck out, sticking your nose out against, like you said, even the anticipation of contact. And so
Mhm.
I want that to be, that's what I work on first. And I don't go on trail rides. I don't go outside the arena until I consistently have that softness, the no brace at the walk and then the gait or trot, basically, the pace.
Mhm.
I don't leave the arena. And then when I leave the arena, I keep working on that till we have it outside the arena.
And if I remember correctly, you start at a standstill, right?
It's
You
a
start that at a standstill?
good question. It depends on the horse. So I
Mhm.
generally prefer to start at okay, this is a great question. At a clinic, I generally prefer to start at a walk if possible. But there are some horses that they're not ready for that. That's too much. And then we work at the halt and get it. That's only been a smaller percentage where I have to start at the halt. And so it kind of depends on where the horse is at in their training and how
Mhm.
much time we have. I think it's something you can definitely do at the halt. But I've had some issues where riders will come and they've taught it at the halt, but they've never taught it at the walk or faster than the walk. And so it's really
Mhm.
important to teach it at the halt, at the walk, and then the faster speed.
I find that horses that have only done it at a standstill, if they did that too long, not to say there's anything wrong with starting at a standstill, I do it often, but if you do it too long, it's really mind-blowing to those horses when it now becomes a thing in motion, like more mind-blowing than it probably needed to be.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
definitely gotta do the thing in motion for sure. Well, what else would differ in your 3-day plan versus your 3-month or so plan?
When I'm at a clinic, my goal is to get the horse to move differently. So if the horse is pacey, which would be the most common not gait that we see at a clinic, I'll use things like ground poles to get them to move their feet differently and to get them to try to gait or trot. I'll do that on the first or second day at a clinic. Where if I'm at home, that's not going to come in till at least like the second or third week because I really want the horse to be soft, to not brace, to start for that to be really easy. When you rush the process of using the ground poles to break up that pace at a clinic, sometimes you end up fighting the horse a little bit more than you need to when you take your time. But we kind of we're doing a few shortcuts. We're trying to get that horse to just move differently because I think so many gaited horses think the rider wants the pace, the not gait, and
Hmm.
they don't even mentally understand we want them to move differently. And so part of if you ever work with gaited horses is to understand that we have to get the horse to understand that we want them to move their feet differently than they are now.
And sometimes that's has to be abrupt with some
Yes.
horses
Yes, and
to
because
get that message
yes,
across, you know?
abrupt is a great way to describe it. You have to do things to get them to be like, that's not right. Change it up. Do something different. And it looks yucky because they're so set in how they're moving. And so you have to, like you said, abruptly change it, make it clear that we don't want that old pattern of moving. And then the big thing that I do is when the horse gets it right, when they start to change, when they start to gait, when they start to soften, the way I train is I stop and I let them soak on it, usually for at least 60 seconds. And that is something I do whether I'm at a clinic or I'm training at home because it's really important for me that the horse mentally understand what we're doing and that it's not just about constantly moving the feet. I want that to soak in. I want that horse to try to figure out, okay, what did I just do that they liked? How do I do that again?
I love that you put the number on it too, because I absolutely know from my own experience and like every human out there, 60 seconds, you just aren't going to wait that long if you aren't used to it. And if
Yes.
you got to start with a timer. It's unbelievable how long it feels sometimes,
Yeah, that happens
especially when you're in the moment.
at clinics all the time. I'll be like, stop and pray, stop, and they stop, and then they pet the horse, and then they walk off, and I'm like, that wasn't even 5 seconds, and it takes a time for that shift to be in there, to like I said, wait 60 seconds, make yourself count. When people make themselves count and make themselves stand, they make the most progress the fastest.
Hmm. Even as someone who I think uh, practices that a lot, if I sometimes I'll be like, I'm gonna film a little mindful minute here. Even then, I'm like, what? 45 seconds? Haven't I been here forever? What? Like, It's funny how it'll creep in on you even when you think you got it. So set that timer. It's a good habit. All right, so we're gonna get to the a serious note here. How would you like to see the horse industry evolve? And what is the first thing you would change or implement to support that evolution?
That is such a tricky thing. I'm loving seeing the changes that are happening in the horse industry. There's people that are making a difference by sharing the negative, and there are people that are making a difference sharing the positive. And I think if we look at social media, it's tricky because you can see the negative or the controversial posts get more views and comments and likes. But there's a tricky side to that. And so I want to be careful what I say because a lot of this is my own personal opinion on what I would like to see.
Hmm.
Specifically for the gated industry, I would like to see fewer metal shoes and better trims. Now, that is
Mm-hmm.
not because I think metal shoes are wicked and evil and you shouldn't use them. What I mean by that is I see a lot of gated horses all over the country that have not great feet, that have shoes on, and the metal shoes have contributed to not great feet on gated horses. There are plenty of appropriate times to put shoes on a horse, for sure. And there are places in the United States that they say you can't use any kind of poly shoe. But I also know that there are people that leave shoes on horses all year round, and that's really, really bad for horses. Um, this probably exists in other horse environments as well, but I do see it in the gated industry a lot. There's lots of horses that are barefoot. Lots of people that use boots or glue on shoes. That technology is advancing very quickly, and I'm very excited about that. But there's still a lot of horses who have bad trims that are contributing to sulcus thrush and other problems with the foot. And I am so excited for that to change. That I think would be what I would change
I
first.
think that's a really good one. Because I think in, whether it's trail riders or any discipline, there's a lot of horses with bad feet, and it's so common. I like what you said about not wearing shoes year round, because yeah, it's not about the evil metal
No,
shoe,
not at all.
but some horses have them stuck on the most unhealthy feet. If you could never pull your horse's shoes without them being dead lame, then there's an
If
issue.
they're
It's
already
not a
lame,
good
the
enough
shoe is
shoeing job.
masking it.
Yeah, it's not a good enough shoeing job.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's a really good point. There's got to be a time to pull them sometime, some way, somehow. And if you can't, maybe start to, it's not like demonize your farrier either, but do
No.
some research and figure out why is it that I can't pull this horse's shoes. It could be a lot of things. It could be
Oh,
the
yes.
living environment, the nutrition, and 10 million other things. So don't yell at your farrier
Not at all.
necessarily.
No. No, this is not to
Yes.
demonize shoes or metal shoes or farriers or horse owners that have metal shoes on their horses. It would just be to bring the
Mhm.
awareness of the drawbacks that metal shoes can often bring, not that they're always horrible or you should never do it. So
Mhm.
that would
We
be
as humans would have some real funky feet if we never took our shoes off. So it just might be something to think about.
yeah. The next two things, which are maybe they're less controversial, I believe. So I'll just bring these two things in the
Okay.
horse industry that I would want to make more common for gated horses for the owners to do would be to test and or treat for ulcers. We know that the numbers are anywhere from 40 to 70% of horses currently have ulcers. Um, and that can lead to a lot of behavioral things, or no, we call them behavioral things, but are all that they are is the horse
Mhm.
showing us that they're in pain. So recognizing that ulcers can cause a lot of different symptoms and being able to either scope or treat for that without scoping, because I know scoping can be expensive. I understand these are expensive things. And then also the other thing I would wish we could normalize is having fairly regular chiropractic or body work treatments for these horses that are being ridden.
Love it. Let's move on over to some questions about you and your personal horses, if that's
Yeah,
all right. Now I said horses. I know you have Firefly, yes, who you are
Yes.
starting under saddle. You have other horses still
Yes,
as well?
I have four
Mhm.
other retired horses. Three of them are over 20.
Okay.
So they're all have physical issues and or age that now precludes them from being worked and or ridden much.
Okay.
So I'm happy
Well,
to.
you can answer these, yeah, however you like
Okay.
about whichever horse you like. But as riders, we have to interpret how our horses feel mentally and physically. What are some ways that your horse tells you how they feel or what they need?
I wish more riders would consider that question of what is your horse? How are they feeling? What do they need that day? So my current riding horse, Firefly, is 6 years old. She is half Rocky, and then the mare is half walking horse, half standardbred. So she's a Rocky walking horse standardbred cross. And I've raised her. She was born in Illinois. She does a lot of things loose. So like when I go to get her out of the pasture, I open the gate, I let her out, no halter. She comes. We most of the time just opening the gate, she comes out, and then she's ready to follow me and do whatever I ask. But there are days where she clearly just wants to go eat grass, and that's rare though. But I assume on those days when she wants to go eat grass, or she's not giving me her full attention, that something's bothering her. She either isn't feeling well or just is hungry and needs to go eat for a little
Hmm.
while, because usually she's like, my friend described her as like a border collie, very intensely focused on her owner and just wants to do stuff all the time. And I was like, yeah, that describes Firefly really well. So
Hmm.
if she's not feeling that way, if she's not giving me that attention, then right now we're at a place in her training where I don't have to force it. Like I have no timeline. No one's forcing me to get on her. I've done a heck of a lot more groundwork than I've done riding on her by far.
Hmm.
So I've put maybe a total of 27 rides on her in her life. I put, I don't know, 12 to 15 rides on her when she was 4, only a couple rides on her when she was 5. And then this year she's 6, and I put more rides on her. She had her first trail ride this year. And she's generally like super willing. Like she's kind of up for anything. And if that changes, like if she's showing that she's not up for it, like a couple days ago, she was a really low energy. Like she would take the food, but she wasn't super engaged. She wasn't really interested in doing stuff. And I think she might have been in heat and a little bit uncomfortable. So I didn't ride her, and I didn't ask her to do anything very strenuous, and kind of gave up on what I had wanted to do that day because she was different. But you could only notice it if you were paying attention because it was pretty subtle.
Exactly. And, and I think, different horses, you have training horses, so of course you know that. Different horses have their different things. You kind of have to be in the habit of that dialogue. And if you're not, then you're probably not seeing the red flag or whatever until it's a much bigger flag, you know?
Yeah,
Definitely has to be a habit to be that way with horses, I think.
yeah.
Okay, so what would you say is you or your horse's best skill right now, and what would you like to improve the most?
I would say Firefly's best skill right now is kind of her liberty work. We've done
Hmm.
mostly liberty. I mean, she can lunge and do all that stuff, but she is good at liberty and she likes to move, but stay with you. So, like, when I'm usually training, I just let her out of the pen and we're just in a big open area. Like, there's lots of grass, but she, like, really likes to stay focused. We need to do more riding. That's kind of the goal for the next year, is more riding, lateral work, starting to bring in collection slowly, more trail riding. That's what she needs. We're going to continue with the Liberty. We are working on a new skill where I'm asking her to back up to a horse bean bag. So it's a very solid, very sturdy bean bag braced up against a solid fence. And I'm asking her to begin the process of sitting down on it. And I'm doing that in
Hmm.
very short little positive increments, because if you do it this way, where you have them sit down slowly, what happens during the process of a horse sitting down is they lift their back and they tuck their pelvis. And they actually get in a posture that's very similar to a horse getting ready to piaffe. And so I'll be taking that her learning that movement of like, it's almost like the school halt where they stop and then you kind of rock back a little bit. Like she's learning that without having to be in movement or having any contact. So that's been really exciting to work on with her. And I video all of that. And so it'll be really interesting to show the final product as we move forward on that behavior.
And I think there's definitely like it's a fun trick. Like there's a fun trick side to stuff that is even, I mean, whatever. There's some people that want to learn tricks because it looks cool on their Instagram. There's sometimes it's genuinely fun to learn a novel thing with a horse,
Yeah.
but I love you talk about the range of motion there because there's definitely a way to do it that has so many extra benefits. It's so much more than just like a novel trick, or
Yes.
can be.
Yes.
Isn't
This one.
isn't necessarily, but how you do it can make it really, really beneficial to the body, like a
Yeah.
body work,
Yeah. No,
body
it is.
control, really.
Yeah, and I shared a video on social media yesterday because I was lunging Firefly yesterday and she offered this lift in the front. Like it wasn't just like throwing the head up, it was an actual like lift the shoulders sort of movement that I have not seen her do before. We've done a lot of long and low, but she on her own just kind of did this beautiful lift. And I have to assume that comes from her like being able to tuck back and rock back, because that's the tucking of the pelvis and the hip is like how you get the front end to lift up.
Very cool. Love that. Okay, now horsemanship and personal development, they go together. There's no denying it. What kind of lessons have horses helped you to learn out of the saddle?
I think probably a lot of people would say the same thing, but I think horses have really helped me to be patient and to slow down and to enjoy the process. Because when I first got started with horses, I was always about the goal. You mentioned having cool tricks for Instagram. Well, that was me, but there was no Instagram when I
Okay.
started.
Right, Facebook, MySpace.
Yeah, yeah.
MySpace.
I was after MySpace, but like Facebook and YouTube. So with my quarter
Yeah.
horse Jackson, he's 21, he's semi-retired now. I wanted to teach the Spanish walk and the rear and the piaffe and all of these cool tricks just because they were cool tricks. And so that was me. And I was like, get these done really quickly. And how fast can I get it done? But over time, I've learned so much. It's about the process. It's about that relationship. That if you're doing it just for the fun trick, you can still make it about the relationship with the horse and not about the end goal. And so that's definitely something that horses have taught me. I've been asked this question before, and I actually don't have a lot of answers. It's probably just because I haven't thought about it enough, about like how they've shaped me outside. Because I sort
hmm
of think of it all as one piece.
Well, when you're a horse trainer, that's easy to do because literally every moment of your day is wrapped around horses. So you're like, what? It's all the same. So I feel that. I feel that for sure. All right. So, corner turners. Corner turners are people, horses, or events that change the trajectory of our lives and define who we are. Do you have any impactful corner turners that come to mind?
When I was 20 and 21, I sold my gaited horse and found that the only horse I had to train was my quarter horse, my gelding. He was 3 years old. And so I started him under saddle. He's a super easy horse. But I wanted to do dressage with him. And we didn't have a lot of money and there was no dressage barns near us. So what I did is I read a lot of books. So there's some really good classical dressage books that really influenced me. But of course, that's not quite enough to, to know what dressage is. And I had a horrible seat. But I found a trainer who I saw at a very small Illinois horse fair. His name was JP Giacomini. And he had a Yahoo group about classical dressage. And I joined the group for free. and I would get my brother to video me riding my quarter horse with my Western saddle and try to do dressage. And I would post on this group and ask for feedback. And some of it was harsh, rightfully so. And some of it was very kind and just encouraging, like little things, change this, try this. And I would say that the people on that group really shaped who I am uh, in a way that they probably had no idea, because I did learn to sit better and ride better. I learned how to train my horse to be soft. I learned how I was doing it badly. And then when I got it right, they would notice. And some of those people on that group literally sent me dressage saddles to try. They sent them to me for free to borrow. And that was hugely impactful in how kind and generous they were, that they would take time to give me feedback. And that definitely shaped a lot of the direction that I went. And so I'm so thankful for the people on that group.
That is awesome. That's a great story. Because there's so much negativity on the internet, and a lot of the things that people point to when they think of the positives of the internet is about like, oh, education is so accessible and we can access all
Yeah.
these things. But that's definitely like and it is education, your
Yes.
story, but it's definitely about the relationships in there too that are possible in that way. That is great. Love that. Okay. Okay, well, it's time then for the most important question of the day. If your fairy godmother granted you three horse-related wishes, what would they be?
Okay. I would love to have like one of every gaited breed so that I could train them and show the different movements just for people to see. Because I love that. I love
Mhm.
showing people slow motion footage. So I wish I could have one of every breed to show people. Like, I really would like a gaited Morgan, and I would really like a gaited Mustang. Uh, I really would like I want to get a registered Rocky and a registered walking horse and a registered Foxtrotter, and a Peruvian Paso and a Pasofino. So yes, I would. That would be my first wish. Would be
Love
I
it.
want one of all those breeds. Um, I think my second wish would be I would really like a dressage horse.
Okay. So
um,
a
a
non-gated dressage
non-gated
horse? Okay.
dressage horse,
Okay.
non-gated walk, trot, canter dressage horse. I think that would be really fun. 6 years ago, I was at a competition and there was a lady there who brought a bunch of horses for her students to ride, and she needed to warm them up. And she had this really beautiful warm blood. And I said, oh, I could warm it up for you. And she let me ride it. Oh, it was so fun. I had such a good time riding. And then, because I've never ridden this horse before in my life. And the lady, it's the first time I met her, but like we'd seen each other's content. So she trusted me to ride. And then her students were all there. And so I would go to the fence and like tell her students what I was doing. Or like if I didn't know how to get the horse to do it because I didn't know the horse, I'd say it. But she came up to me and she's like, that's exactly what I tell my students. But anyway,
That's great.
that was really fun. So I would, yeah, a walk, trot, canter, dressage horse. I would like that. Okay. And then I think the other thing I would like, have you ever seen, um, it's a water, it's like an outside water trotting ring. So the water's like 6 inches deep.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And it's a big enough circle that you can ride your horse in a trot around it. I want one of those because it would be so good for the gaited horses that I work to be able to like use their bodies well when they're ready for it. So I think that would be my third wish, is to get one of those.
I like that. Good. Love it. Okay. Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. This was so fun.
It was.
What is the best way for people to find you and follow along with what you're doing?
Yeah, my business name is Ivy's Glide Gait. If you just look up Ivy and horses, it comes up. My website is ivyshorses.com. You can look up Ivy's Glide Gait on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And I've got a lot of free content, and you can find me on any of those platforms.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. This has been a great time. I really
It
appreciate
has.
it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
We'll have to do it again. I think there's more we've got to say. I hope you enjoyed the show. Visit tamaraleebarrett.com for more info and links to our socials. Remember to click follow or subscribe, rate the show, and share with a friend. Until next time, happy horsing.